for the most
one
authentic
side.
Caribbean
Yeah,
food.
where's that one?
Caribbean Bakery and Restaurant. They got natural organic juice bars that'll get your day started right. Like the Power Punch.
Where you want to put it?
Mega Green. Roots like the
You put it where you
Immortal
wanna
and the
put it.
Resurrection. Peep this. They have an extended bakery department that whips up my favorite. The hot heart over it. White or wheat. That's your
You know what I'm
choice.
gonna do? I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna put it in here because these are.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they also cater to vegans and vegetarians.
No,
the
'cause the
Ital
sound
stew
is
and
much
the Ital
better.
aki, the soul jerk salmon and mango tilapia. And of course, they got the usual curry goat, oxtail, brown stew chicken, jerk chicken, and so much more. I mean, their menu is extended and they're highly rated. Your best bet is to just stop by or give them a call. They're open Monday through Wednesday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're located at 56 Main Street in Orange, New Jersey, and can be reached at 973-395-3777.
These days are some hungry days. We need some more food up on the empty plate. Long time we they are we sit on our way. Sun splash restaurant and run the place. Everybody me say just want a taste, yeah.
Let your food be a medicine. Eat well, live longer. I'm David Shepard, and I endorse this commercial.
Eric Dawson. Mornings at 10 o'clock
Hey, bro, you're doing a great job. Love listening to you.
on 94.3.
Splash Radio.
Splash Radio. 94.3. Reggae. Dance hall. Soca. Hip hop and R&B. African. Disco. Oldies but goodies.
Large upload boy, Mr. Lover. Shut it! Yo, the best station on the planet.
Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Well, I don't know, so Mr. J represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We just splash out the music on them.
I'm ready.
Initialize sequence now.
Alright, looks like you're all set. Thank you, OB.
Him.
Good over there.
Your attention, please.
Thank you.
This
Enjoy, man.
is no
Thank you.
ordinary show. Covering news and information for Essex County, New Jersey, and beyond. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Broadcasting from 94.3 Splash Radio. Now, here's your host, giving it to you like only he can. It's Eric Dawson.
Hey, this is Eric Dawson, and this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. Caller number 973-457-8000. Again, it's 973-457-8000. If you're listening through your mobile devices, 213-493-0287. And as always, you can check us out. We're streaming live on Facebook. And I am honored today, Monday. I normally have Kevin Jenkins in. He's out getting ready for a symposium of some sort about education, so I can't wait to hear from him when he's back, and we'll bring that information to you guys. But I am excited to have Jim Johnson in the studio with me today, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Eric. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing really well. I am so proud of you. I just want to start by saying that I am so very, very proud of the campaign that you ran, the level of integrity that I saw in the campaign, and the fact that you dared to challenge the status quo.
Well, thank you. You're really gracious in saying that, and I'm grateful just to have had the opportunity to run in a way that I think made people proud.
I think it did, man. I mean, when I put the ad up that you were going to be on the show, it got an astounding 50 plus shares or so, and the comments were amazing, man. Were really amazing. You should go back and read them. I'm sure that people are putting in great campaign, all caps, exclamation point. So folks across the county and dare I say across the state, we're very, very proud of what you did.
I'm glad. I wanted to make people proud.
So what was it? So I want to know, right? Because Brenda State. Well, I've worked on citywide campaigns. I've worked on a countywide campaign before. But talk to me about what goes into a statewide campaign.
The short answer is blood, sweat, and tears, and more sweat. People say New Jersey is a small state. When you're running statewide and you are running from top to bottom and side to side, it's big. And one of the things that I left the campaign with was, there are two things. One was a tremendous sense of gratitude for the people who encouraged me and supported me, and a sense of just wonder at some of the folks in this state who are unsung heroes, who do amazing things in their communities, and would they need to be held up as examples of what all of us should be trying to do to make our communities and our state better.
So what kind of stories did you hear out on the campaign trail?
There's one person that I met. Her name is Regina Thompson Reynolds. She's was a mother. She will be a mother out of Trenton, who not only told me a story, but anytime there was a moment when my energy was getting low, I thought about her. She is a member of Moms Demand Action, which is a gun safety group, and she came into that effort because her son was killed on the streets of Trenton about 5 years ago. And she took that pain and created a scholarship in his honor. What she said to me was this: I will never see my son walk across the college graduation stage, and he was in college and he was doing great. But I can make sure that others walk across that stage and get those diplomas in his name. And so she established a scholarship in his name. She's been an advocate for gun safety, for legislative change, and she is just fierce. And every couple of weeks or so after I met her during the campaign, we would just exchange texts, and she would keep me going.
So what was it about you, or did she share that had her gravitate toward you, your campaign, and just sharing not just an interest, but a desire to be a support system for you?
It was probably the gun safety issues and the way I talked about them. I talked about them from the perspective of someone who had known. The first person I knew to be killed by a gun was a man named Mr. Harrell, who was a pillar of our community, and he was killed when I was 7 years old. And I had that personal experience of loss, but then as a Treasury official, I'd gone to Columbine just a few days after the murders there. And you remember in Columbine, 13 people were killed. 2 more, the shooters, died that day. And because I oversaw the ATF, I was on the ground about 4 days while it was still an active crime scene. And that was one of those moments where when you witness something like that, and for me, it was a motivating factor, and that resonated with her. That touched her, and that's how we bonded.
So I wanna go back for a second, if you don't mind. When you run a campaign, and there were so many people who said they didn't know Jim Johnson, they had never heard of Jim Johnson, if they had known a little bit more about Jim Johnson, and so now that the campaign for the primary is over, and you can take a deep breath. And we have so many listeners and viewers right now. Just tell them a little bit about Jim Johnson. I mean, because I know that on the campaign trail, it's sound bites, it's bullet points, it's trying to compact everything into a sentence or two, because you got to move on to the next door, you got to do whatever. But now, just so that people, who wanted to know. can get a better idea of who you are?
The short answer is I've always been a workhorse, not a show horse, and have worked on important issues. But the deeper issue is this: we're on Tremont Avenue. My aunt and uncle lived around the corner on Tremont Court, and between Montclair, Newark, Orange, and Bayonne, that's where I grew up. And I was one of these kids that grew up in a family in which my parents always talked about serving, always talked about, my father used to say, help your fellow man, help your fellow man. And they created these opportunities for me that many of my cousins didn't have. And it was clear that they weren't having it. And the outcome in my life, the fact that I'd be in a position to even run for governor, is not a result of my talent or hard work alone. It's because I know that many other people were pushing forward. And that is what propelled me to take on a lot of the projects that I've taken on, and it's what propelled me to run for governor. But that's the space that it come from. I grew up in the black church, again, where the emphasis was on service in my church at St. Mark's in Montclair. And that's how I came to run.
Now, church. I had a pastor on from and in fact, he said you came to speak at his church. He's a pastor, I can't remember the name of the church, in South Orange. I had him on and we were talking about the role of the church in the black community. And it was, I never met him. A woman who does Health and Wellness Wednesdays with me brought him in, but the work that he's doing is phenomenal. How did the church, not just the black church, but how did the church function for you in your life in terms of being a support unit? And then what do you see lacking, if anything? Maybe that's a leading question, but what do you see, if anything, that's lacking that the church could do more of to be that pillar again?
Well, so I was the son of a church organist and the grandson of a preacher. My big dad was an associate minister at Wells Cathedral in Newark, and so church was a very big part of our lives, and we would, because my mother would take us to sing everywhere. We not only sang in our home church, but I grew up singing we sang in storefront churches. There used to be a children's shelter, what we would call a group home now in Belleville, and Big Dad had all of the grandchildren, all 13 of us at one stage, going to the children's shelter on Saturdays to provide church for them. And he emphasized, this is what we're about. Service. So that's what I learned learned to grow up in church. But it was not, it's complicated because a lot of people get frustrated with church and with service, and the black church is very, very varied. To whether or not you're talking about the Church of God in Christ, or the United Methodist or Baptist, it can be very, very varied, but it can be incredibly rich, because it is one of the conveyors of culture, which at its height can provide people with a lot of strength.
But what we have, and I talk about this, and he was here, and Sherry said, "Eric, you're not going to say it when he comes in, are you?" I said, "No, I speak what's on my mind." And I told him, I said, part of the thing that I see in our community is so many churches have gone astray. They are not, and maybe it's not the church, it's the pastor, but then the pastor's the head of the church. But they have become super political, They have become less about service, and in some of our communities where you see an abundance of churches, but you see deplorable conditions, you can see that there's no extension from in the church, from what's preached from the Bible, and it doesn't reach outside of the walls of the church. And so I told him, I said, I refer to them as poverty pimps. And he said to me, he said, I can't tell you that you're not telling the truth. How do we, and not just in the church, but then when you say, well, the church is now, a lot of the pastors are intertwined with the political stuff in a way where at the center of it, we don't have service. So what we wind up with is...
So, you raise a really tough issue, and around the role of the church. And I tend to step back and say, okay, the church is one very important institution in a series of institutions. And sometimes we ask churches to be the be-all and end-all. You and I grew up with the history of the civil rights movement being close enough to touch. And what was built up was the idea that it was the black church in big, broad terms that drove it. When we look deeper and we look at the history of, say, Martin Luther King, whether or not it's in Montgomery or moving on to Atlanta, but particularly in Montgomery, there was a lot of tension within the church within the black churches of Montgomery and just even the Baptist churches of, was he pushing too hard? Was he talking too much about politics? And we need to stay in our own particular lane and provide people with a sense of calm and preparation for the hereafter, not a place to do battle on the ground. So we've always had this tension just within the African American church. And the African American church, as I said, it's very varied, and it has there's so many who adopted different faiths or grew up in different faiths, whether or not it's a nation of Islam or Baha'is or other faiths, that the black church hasn't been serving those needs, and that would be for generations.
Well, but specifically, what the pastor said to me when we were talking about it, he said, he said, a lot of churches, Eric, and I told him, I said, at some point I'm going to name names because I know some of these guys. I've worked with them. I've been in rooms with them where I've seen political deals go down. He said, please don't name names here on the show. So I didn't. Thank you. Terry, yeah, that's okay. Listen, man, I have senior moments and I'm only 54.
You're young.
But Dr. Richardson, yes. What he did say was that he does not use his pulpit or his church as a bargaining chip, but as a way to edify and empower his congregation. And he said, Eric, listen, he said, I knew Jim for a while. He said, and so to have him come and speak at my church made sense. He said, these other guys, he said, I didn't know them. They've never talked to me. And so if you are really a shepherd of your sheep and a guardian of their souls, then you just don't let anybody in. And what I see is the opposite in a lot of these churches where for money, for nickels on the dollar, they'll allow politicians to come and stand behind a pulpit in an attempt to sway, 200 or 300 that are in their congregation. And I know because I'm close to all of these elections that there were some churches that you weren't invited to go and speak at, and so for me, it angered me. Because if these churches are supposed to be there for the community and not for the self-interest of the pastor, then every person should have gotten an opportunity to speak, to tell their story to the congregation so that they could make up their minds. And it just, I can't tell you, man, it just angers me. I can't express how much it does and frustrates me that the churches do that. and that the pastors do that, and the congregations allow them to?
Well, my experience has been a little bit different. I don't think that there was a church where I put in a call and I said, either I did or my staff did, and we said we wanted to, I wanted to attend, I wanted to make a statement or otherwise, where I was told, no, you're not going to be welcome here. And there were even churches that had already aligned themselves with a candidate because he was out early, who recognized me when I was in the congregation, made a point of talking about my aspiration, and were, I think, appropriate. Now, my approach in attending churches was a little bit different than what I had experienced some politicians doing, because I really would go there to worship along with members of the congregation. For one, I found it to be, it's respectful. But the other thing is this, which is strange for someone who's in politics now, is that I don't think you get any smarter by talking, but you get smarter by listening. And I remember being in one service, I had been canvassing in Philadelphia the day before for Hillary Clinton, and I was talking to Trump supporters and hearing all of their stuff, because I would listen to anybody, right? And then I was in Shiloh Baptist Church in Newark. My mother had been organist there in the 70s, and I was just listening to the pastoral prayer. And what I was hearing was the same thing in that church that I had heard from some of the Trump supporters in Philadelphia about the loss of jobs, about the loss of community, about having leaders chosen for them rather than them choosing their leaders. And for me, it was an opportunity to start to put together some thoughts about the false choices that our political system seems to want to run right now. You know, the false choice between, on the one hand, economic opportunity, sort of dealing with what people call the white working class issues, and on the other, justice, which people will disparage will criticize as the identity politics issues. And as I campaigned, one of the things that was very clear to me, and this part of it was just stemmed by sitting and listening in church, was that we got this false choice. That it's not enough for you to say to me, Jim, it's great, you can eat where you want, you can go to school where you want, you can do all those things, but you can't get a job that actually will enable you to do anything. And nor is it okay to say, you got the great job, you could be in a big law firm in a corner office, but you're not going to be treated well on the highways in certain states or even in our state. That's not okay either. And putting it together is what we ought to be having a conversation about, rather than this false choice of either or. But part of that conversation started by being in a church and listening to what the concerns that were on people's heart.
And so I posted something over the weekend. I kind of, went on a Facebook rant and posting a bunch of different things. And one of the things I talked about was, well, we started having this discussion about an agenda or black agenda, right? And that was one. And then the other one was me trying to push the voter to be more proactive instead of reactive, meaning that instead of waiting for a candidate to emerge, right, and then having to retrofit maybe your thoughts and ideas about what your community should be like, or what you are entitled to, or what you want them to fight for, you now start to, whittle that list of things down because that candidate may not be all of those things. Be proactive in organizing and developing a list of things that you want, and then go find somebody who embodies that. So we were having both of those conversations because somebody, you read the page and it'll say it. Somebody said, well, Jim Johnson should run for this and Jim Johnson should run for that. And I said, well, why should he run for anything? I said, what is it that you need? And what need do you believe he fulfills? And they couldn't answer that. And so I said, well, then when you say somebody should run, then it's just emotionalism, isn't it?
It can be, but you raise a really important thought about the conversation between people who would put themselves forward to lead and people who would be led. When my team started to do the things that you have to do in campaign, polling and things like that, there were a list of issues that we were polling around. And I said, I want to start with a question that's not, how do you feel about X, whether or not it's property taxes or schools or things like that, because I know what's important to me. But I want to find, unprompted, if you're talking to people, what's important to them. What do you want to see? The question is, what do you want to see at the end of 4 years the state to look like? What is it that, and so we were hearing from voters what it is that, what was their vision, and I think that there has to be a conversation between those that would lead and those who would be led around what the shared vision is. And it was it's unusual. In fact, I would ask this. I asked the question a lot in town halls. I say, 5 minutes at the end of this, I'm going to answer all of your questions or most of them, but I want to hear from you. What does success look like in this state in 4 years, 5 years? What gets a governor an A? And it's fair to say that people aren't accustomed to being asked that sort of a question, which is why when you asked that question, the response was but that's that
because it requires them to take some ownership over this thing.
It does, but it also requires people to feel like leaders are actually listening to them when they say, because they're putting themselves out there. This is what I hope for. That it's easy to put out what you complain, what you don't like, right? My taxes are too high. That's an easy thing to put out there, but we have been so disappointed in the response to our hopes that people don't even they're not willing to say, this is what I hope for. This is what, and it's in all sorts of relationships. The hardest question for people to answer often is not what ticks me off, what makes me angry. It's what I hope for, because that makes you vulnerable. And we're too often disappointed in that conversation.
You listen to the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. I'm here with Jim Johnson. He was the Democratic gubernatorial candidate in this year's primary. The call-in number is 973-457-8000. I'm going to ask you guys to take a second, please, and just hit share. Because I think it's important for as many people as possible to see this interview. I think it just helps. I think it just helps. I don't know if you gave an answer to, or if anybody gave an answer to your question that you posed, which was, what would get a governor an A? What was the? Now you did that in a poll.
When we went out with our first polling, but then in many town halls and meetups, and even when I'm talking to people on the street, I would ask, what is it that you hope for? And one thing that people talked about in a couple of different ways is, listen, we want a sense of peace in our communities, opportunities for our children. That's what the state should look like at the end of the day. And peace isn't just defined as the absence of violence within communities, particularly in some of our tougher urban areas, but it's actually this fellow feeling, this sense that I matter to my neighbor and my neighbor matters to me. And that's something that it doesn't matter almost what your zip code is, people want some of it. It was friendly, it was comfortable. And at the end of my half an hour with them, the president of the Chamber of Commerce said, what can we do to bring our state? We are diverse, but we are divided. How can we bring it together? And that's a common theme that you hear, that I heard all over the state. We actually want to be one state.
So these are broad stroke answers, though.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you say, okay, we want to be one state, now you have to say how.
Right.
Right? And I think that the frustration always comes in because there is no how And because there's no how, there are no tasks assigned, right? So then there's no timeline. And then oftentimes you get to the end of the term, and the thing that everybody wanted, right, didn't come to pass because there was no real work.
Right. So you need the role of the next governor, and from my perspective, I hope that the next governor is Phil Murphy, is to lay out a path for those tasks, because you do need to have a vision that you're pointing for, but goals without discipline are going to be frustrated teams, right?
Yeah.
And Denzel Washington has a great talk. It's sort of somebody put together his 10 rules of success, and one of them was goals without discipline is just going to lead to frustration.
And that's what we are. We're just a bundle of frustration because I don't even say that they're goals. I say they're dreams. Mm-hmm. They're not goals, because when you set a goal, then you have a beginning, middle, and end, right? And you start to lay out milestones and benchmarks and all those. You go through that. There's a protocol. Once you establish goals,
you're starting a management seminar,
dude. Because
right?
But that's my background,
right?
And I tell people, I'm trained as you can hear it, right? But exactly. I'm trained as a project manager, and so you have to manage it, and it was very interesting. In one of recent municipal elections, I said to the voters after they voted the candidate, and it wasn't somebody I supported, but he became mayor, and I said, what is it that you expect from him in his first 100 days? And they said, oh, Eric, you're just being a hater. I said, no. I said, what I'm trying to do is get you in front of this thing. Because what typically happens is, at the end of 100 days, they tell you what they did, right? And then you accept it, right? I said, but you need to be proactive and say, this is what I want you to do in your 100 days. And then you can measure what they did with what your expectations were. But if you don't have any expectations, and if you're not setting goals for your elected leaders and then micromanaging them, then again, you'll always be frustrated.
Mm-hmm. And another piece, though, is just continuous engagement.
I'm glad you get it. As soon as I started talking about it, you go, yeah, you're setting up project management, because that's what it is. But I think that in our community, I say, and I'm sorry, but I say that, what's missing or what's lacking that we can't get the electorate to function like that?
Here's what I would hope for,
mm-hmm.
is that we, and again, there's reason for people to be frustrated with the system, because it's been dysfunctional in many respects for a long time, and people have fallen away from so many different institutions. But what I would hope for is much more continuous engagement. One of the things that I have seen around the state is you will have one or two people step forward to lead or be involved in say, local politics in some way. I'm thinking now of one gentleman who was on a municipal planning board, and the meetings would be advertised,
mm-hmm.
and there would be much less attendance than he would hope. And he would be there, and he'd be raising his hand and pushing issues, and he wouldn't have a posse with him. And I think what happens is that people get frustrated when you put you invest time in a process, and nothing ever seems to change. And that becomes a negative feedback loop, where people, and like, the less you put in, the less change there is, the less likely you are to put in. And it's my hope with new leadership that folks will see that it makes a difference, that engagement makes a difference, because I think it does.
Well, I think out of all of the candidates, simply because of how you ran your campaign, which wasn't based on money. Right? It was based on ideas. It was based on having conversations with people. It wasn't based on locking down political bosses and that kind of stuff. I think that you created a level of engagement in the community, and you built an apparatus that reaches out and informs, right? And empowered people to think differently. And in places where you weren't on line A and you were in fact on line D, people sought you out on line D to vote for you. Are you going to dismantle that apparatus? Or are you going to continue to engage and inform the community about issues?
I left my law firm to be engaged with community, and the apparatus is not mine. I happen to be the beneficiary of a lot of enthusiasm, and I am prepared to work with many others who want to continue to push forward change. There are issues that are very important to me that the Democratic nominee, Phil Murphy, is pushing forward, and they are going to lead, I think, to positive changes for communities, and that's going to be important to support. But this idea of my owning an apparatus is not something that I would necessarily adopt. I think that there is a bundle of energy that I have tapped into that at most I am one of the stewards of, and with a view of stewardship you think about, okay, what do we do to move this to the next level, to get more and more people engaged. It's one of the issues that I worried about when I was at the Brennan Center for Justice on a national level, where one of our strategic goals was not only to make democracy more open, but to get people really engaged, because nationwide as well as statewide, the most dominant political party is the couch party. It's the folks that stay home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw it in 2008, 2012, and then we saw the culmination of the lack of continued engagement play itself out. How much time do I have with you?
I got a little bit more time.
Okay.
I was actually supposed to call someone 10 minutes ago.
Can we take it till the 11 o'clock break, or do you need to cut out earlier?
We can
17 minutes.
Break,
okay.
Yeah.
So in 2008, there was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm in the Democratic Party, right? Obama, the Obama vote, the Obama phenomenon. Everybody came out. And then it kind of, so it ballooned up, and then it went back down. And then in 2012, they ramped it up again, and then it went back down. And then they tried to do it one more time in 2016, and it wouldn't inflate. And as a result, we wound up with Donald Trump in the White House. That same kind of thing is happening on a local level, not just on a national level, where people get, a candidate comes along and folks believe in that candidate. They believe in, do you mind pushing that button for me? Just a red one. Just push it up. Paul, I'm going to ask you to hold. And then when I bring you on, I'm going to ask you to turn your radio down. Hold on one second. When they find a candidate that they believe in, that candidate loses. Historically, the candidate has gone away, right? And then those folks go back to their couch and they await another Superman, if you will, right? And each time, and I think this is part of the distrust that we talked about earlier, that folks just look and say, well, if the person ran and if they really believed the things that they said, why aren't they still here fighting with me? Because the problem still exists. But they've gone, they've taken whatever machine they had that was trying to slay the dragon, and then here we are left, to deal with this, the venom from this dragon, for having stepped out to try to support this person who's now gone. How do we keep it together? How do we keep it together?
So there are two things. One is you talked about 08 and 12 and what happened with the Obama enthusiasm. There was a sense among many that once we had President Obama, things were good. And we could sort of okay, we'll turn over him, he's got this, and we could check out. And so we checked out, then we checked back in on 12 because we didn't want Romney. and then we kind of sort of checked out. And then, there's some question as to whether or not the Hillary Clinton campaign asked people to check back in the same way. And so you have that phenomenon of sort of like we have this one leader, and that is going to do it. And I don't view change as being sort of the one leader. Years ago, on the Martin Luther King's birthday, I put 2 pictures up of him at the mall in Washington. One is on the actual day that he gave the I Have a Dream speech, where he is surrounded by people. And then I photoshopped everybody out, put him in front of just him on the mall speaking to an empty space. And the power was really him with the people, not him alone. And we have, from time to time, we forget that. Then I hear a question to me is like, what am I doing next? I learned a lot over the last 8 months. I am not going anywhere. I have one more generation of my family to raise here in New Jersey, and I'm committed to my community, and I'm committed to my state, and I'm going to serve in some capacity. It may not be an official office, but I've learned and met a tremendous number of people who want to see things get better for everyone in this state, and I'm not going to turn my back on them and say, like, y'all got this, I'm going to do something else. All right, let's take this call. Hello, caller.
Good morning, Eric. It's Dave. How are you?
Hey, Dave. I'm doing well.
Good. Mr. Johnson, pleasure talking to you. I want to compliment you on the great campaign you ran. I know you're not ready to make any announcements right now. I've been on Eric's show a few times. As he knows, I'm a staunch Republican and former Bloomfield councilman. I ran for mayor last year, and I'm running for the council this year. But in your case, Mr. Johnson, I would be more than happy if you choose to run for county executive to back you 100% as a Republican and get as many Republicans as I can to switch over and vote for Democrat in the primary. And I spoke to Eric yesterday. He has my cell phone number, and he said that he'd be willing to give it to you. And I'm from Montclair. I was raised in Montclair, and I would seriously like to sit down and have a conversation with you about what your future plans are.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, I'm always happy to have.
Dude, that's just like the huge smile on your face.
I wasn't kidding. I think my campaign was, one of the hallmarks of it was I actually said what I thought, and I am not thinking about anything other than really reconnecting with people who in my family who have been more than a little bit abandoned for a while, and building on relationships that I've established over that time. But I appreciate it, and I'll take the cell phone number, and we can go to the Americana Diner on Main Street in West Orange, which is my favorite place to put on too many pounds.
It's a great diner, guys.
Right.
It's a great diner. So let me add, and then when you on election day, you called in here, we had a conversation, you shared some last minute thoughts with folks. As you watched, because of all of the work that you put in, and as you watched the returns come in, where did you watch them, by the way? Were you with your family?
We were at home.
Okay. And as you were watching the returns come in, I mean, what kinds of emotions went through you?
Well, you asked in the beginning about, tell me a little bit about yourself. What don't people know? I was an athlete in high school and college, and remain a very competitive person. And no matter how much you say, well, okay, the odds are long and we're going to push, nobody likes to lose. And so part of the feelings was just a sense of disappointment. But I also felt particularly as an ex-athlete, nobody likes to lose and come into the locker room feeling like, okay, I'm ready to run another 10 laps. You want to make sure that you've left everything on the field, and I had that feeling as well. You know, because I couldn't say to myself, oh man, you know, if I could have made one more call, if I could have knocked on, shaken one more hand or something like that, that feeling I didn't have. I felt like, you know, it was all on the field.
So where was the disappointment?
The disappointment comes in the sense that at the end of the day, you want to, if you're going to put in your full effort, you want to get a successful outcome. And there are some things about the campaign for which I am very, very proud. And I think that I ran with, it was, at the end of the day, it was a fairly high-level campaign. We had hard discussions over some tough issues. But I think that when we appeared together, people left the debates or the forums feeling, okay, well, this is an intelligent discussion about issues that we face in the state. And to that extent, I was proud to be part of an effort that really educated the public.
Now, was there anything in the campaign that surprised you?
The thing that I had not been expecting is that being on a campaign, you expect to get tired. You expect there to be some hard back and forth in the press or face to face. What I didn't expect, and I've always had this deep feeling for the state in my bones, but I didn't expect that during the course of campaigning you actually end up falling in love, in the sense of your feeling, at least I did, feeling connected to people of a whole variety of backgrounds. You know, I tried to run a campaign in which I was labeled the wonky one in the campaign. So I'm the cerebral guy, but I also brought my heart to it. And to do that, you have to crack your heart a little bit open when you're talking to folks. You can't listen to someone talk about their struggles with a child who is severely disabled. And I suppose you could and say, okay, this is my 6-point plan. But if you're looking in a mother's eyes and she said, listen, my daughter she is beautiful, she is talented, she is a high functioning autistic, but she can't cross the street by herself. And I don't know what's going to happen to her when I am gone. You'd have to be a stone not to be affected by that in some way. And then, like, she's there, she's standing, she talks about how much energy it takes to do that, and she's ready to do more. And to hear stories like that time and time again, it blows you away.
Wow. Like I said, man, you ran it. Now, what are there? 21 cities, I think, in the county, and how many counties in the state?
21.
Did you touch every county?
I wasn't in Cape May, and I didn't do any work in Sussex County. But then most of the other counties, I was in for at least a little bit of time.
Man, again, I just want to say, and folks are weighing in and congratulating you once again. And you and I have had this conversation off air. This platform is for exactly this, and not just for you. I said to you on election day that I reached out to the other campaigns and tried to get them to call in as well, because I think that we get stronger as a community when we're all talking, right? And so to have this as a platform where you can just come in and chop it up, you have an idea, you want to spit it out to, a mass group of people. It don't cost no money, no mailer, no anything required. Just grab the mic, we turn it on at 10 o'clock, and then we can share thoughts. I think is the beginning of rebuilding the communities, especially in the inner cities that I think have been lacking for far too long. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate what you did. I haven't seen that kind of enthusiasm in a gubernatorial election in a long time. I remember Ken Gibson ran for governor. There was excitement in the inner cities about that. I remember Cordell Cooper, there was some excitement around that. And these were all, who ran for executive, but Ken Gibson ran for governor. But these were two African Americans who were trying to move up beyond just being mayor, where we thought in the inner cities that we would have access now to somebody who from a visceral level could understand some of the pain and hurt that was going on inside these inner cities. So I'm certain that the people who were cheering you on from the sidelines and those who were on the field blocking and tackling for you wanted to see you score a touchdown and spike the ball and maybe do a Billy White Shoes dance in the end zone, man. Because for us it's about access.
I'm too low key for that, right? For the end zone dance.
No, I think I think we might have gotten you to do an end zone dance. I think we might have been able to get you to do one.
At least spiking the ball.
At least spiking the ball, but that's what it was, man. And so I'm encouraging them not to wait, because that's what my fear is now, that they're going to sit on their hands, Jim, and wait for somebody else instead of birthing somebody else from this movement,
or being that somebody else, right?
Or being that somebody else.
One of the things that too often happens, and it's not just in any particular community, is that we tend to say this: unless I can solve the whole thing, it's not worth trying. And it reminds me of the story that a friend of mine, she actually started an organization called Starfish, and what it does is it gives young women, mostly young women of color, the opportunity to not only get scholarships to school, but identifies mentors for them and provides internships. And this is Soledad O'Brien, who used to be on CNN.
Mm-hmm.
She said, look, it's like somebody on the ocean, and the big wave has come in and has washed all these starfish up. And then as a person who sees all the starfish on the beach, and some of them are surely going to die, she starts to pick up a bunch and tosses them back in the water. And then some wise guy comes along and said, what are you doing that for? You're going to what you're doing isn't going to make a difference. It's not going to make a difference at all. Look at all these starfish. And the woman tossing the starfish back in the ocean says, it does to the ones that I get.
Mm.
And if each of us decides we're just going to pick up 15 starfish, that's a lot of starfish if each of us decides to do that. Rather than saying there are just too many starfish, so I'm going to go back to my couch and put on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom or whatever, the Shark Hunt or something like that.
What was the total number of votes you got?
109,000 and plus.
109. So what would you say? So if 109,000 people who voted for Jim Johnson went and picked up 10 starfish, right?
Right. That's a million.
That's a million.
That's a million. That's a million.
It's a movement, man. If they want it to be.
Right.
Right? And you don't have to carry them the whole way. You got something started.
Right. If we want to do it.
If they want to do it. So listen, man, like I said, I appreciate you. We'll be in touch, hopefully. Feel free to pop by anytime, talk about anything that you want to talk about. I'll be on the front line. Doing what it is that I do. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this was a great time that I've had here with Jim Johnson, and I hope to see him around.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So listen, when I come back, you saw that I posted something on my page. All hail the king. It was very, very interesting for me to see the the commentary by the Chief of Staff to refer to his brother as the King of Newark. And I put a little meme up on my page which tickled a few people. So we're going to have a conversation about that and what that means in terms of the overall culture that folks have been experiencing in the great city of Newark. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Hang tight.
The current time,
Flash Radio 94.3. Reddit, dance hall, soca, hip hop and R&B, African, disco, oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Hi, this is McBoomin Moving, box truck for rent, for all your light moving needs, anywhere within the Northeast Orange, Irvington Orange areas. $50 a trip from Monday through Thursday, $60 from Friday through Sunday. Call 862-279-9300. That's 862-279-9300.
What I am doing? Downloading the Western Union app. I need to send money to my auntie in Nigeria. What I am doing now? Checking today's exchange rate to Nigeria on the Western Union app. Now I'm sending my auntie money to help her with her groceries.
Download the Western Union app today. Use it to check today's exchange rate and send money to loved ones in Nigeria. Western Union, moving money for better.
Western Union makes money from currency exchange. Carefully compare fees and exchange rates, which may vary and are subject to change. NMLS number 906983.
For the most authentic Caribbean food in town, check out Sunsplash Caribbean Bakery and Restaurant. They got a natural organic juice bar that'll get your day started right. Like the Power Punch, the Vegan Juice, the Mega Green, Roots like the Immortal and the Resurrection. And peep this, they have an extended bakery department that whips up my favorite, the hot Hardo breads. White or wheat, that's your choice.
If you're feeling hungry, just grab a bite. Sunsplash Bakery and food is right. Jamaican party, Itala veggie. And Sunsplash Bakery and food is right. Mix the peanut with the caramel porridge.
Serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They also cater to vegans and vegetarians with the Ital stew and the Ital aki, the soul jerk salmon and mango tilapia. And of course, they got the usual curry goat, oxtail, brown stew chicken, jerk chicken, and so much more. I mean, their menu is extended and they're highly rated. Your best bet is to just stop by or give them a call. They're open Monday through Wednesday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're located at 56 Main Street in Orange, New Jersey, and can be reached at 973-395-3777.
Each day starts on hungry days. We need some more food up on the empty plate. Long time we there, we should on the wait. Sunsplash restaurant and run the place. Everybody me say just want a taste, yeah.
Let your food be a medicine. Eat well, live longer. I'm David Shepard, and I endorse this commercial.
Yo, this is Splash Radio at the #1 radio station in New Jersey. I want him.
Other than no, Mr. G represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We just splash out the music on them.
Hey, this is Eric Dawson. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. Call-in number 973-457-8000. Again, 973-457-8000. If you're listening through your mobile device, it's 213-493-0287. And as always, you can check me out. I'm streaming live Monday through Friday, 10 to 12 noon on Facebook. Soon to be streaming on Twitter and where's the other one that we're gonna Twitter and YouTube. So we're trying to set that up so that I could simulcast through Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook all at the same time. So so stay tuned for those of you who don't have Facebook accounts. Starfish. That's what he said to me when we went to commercial break. He said, Eric, remind them of the starfish. And so, if, like I said to you all before, if you believe, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to have the conversation with him. He just wanted to talk. Didn't want to really talk politics. Wanted to just talk. And so we did that. And I hope that you guys got a little more insight into who Jim Johnson is as a person. But what I said to you all is this, and I put this on my page. If there is let me back up, because this is important. Everybody talks about how do we get to the table, that we're not at the table, that other people are making decisions at the table. Well, Jim set a table for you. Do you understand that? He set a table for you. And right now, you got 109,000 people across this state who are sitting there with you. What are you going to do with that? Why are you waiting for him? That was the discussion he and I were having, right? Why are you all waiting for him? There were 109,000 people across the state who Jim put at a table with you. What are you prepared to do to make a difference now? If there was something about any of the candidates that you didn't like, or things that the candidates didn't talk about that you believe should be addressed, you have 109,000 other people who felt the exact same way. And you can organize and mobilize those people and create some change. Now, this is what I put on my page. And I know Jim said that, he hopes that Phil Murphy becomes the governor. And I don't know. Now that we're through the primary, I'm not exactly sure yet where I am. And I mean that. I don't know whether or not I may have been, if Chitterelli had won, I may have been with Chitterelli. He makes some solid sense about some of the things that he's talking about wanting to do. Giordano, I've been trying to reach out to her to have a conversation with her. But I think that we have 5 months, guys. We don't have to sign away anything right now. We have 5 months with which to negotiate, right? Don't tip your card too soon, right? Don't sell yourself short. You have 5 months to negotiate. Do you have from the candidate what it is that you want or what you demand? Do you have it? And if you don't have it, then don't sell yourself short. Like I said again, there's a table that's been set with 109,000 people. Reach out, communicate with those people, find where they are, and then use that leverage to carve out a more reasonable platform for your community that might already exist. Right? That's what you could do right now. And that's what you should do. And in my post over the weekend, I said, if each person literally just went and got 5 people, if each person that supported Jim Johnson educated 5 people on who Jim Johnson is. And now you can do some of that, right? Somebody in this thread said, well, he had no commercials. That's not true. He did have commercials. But what I say is this, where he may not have had the money to have the commercials air as frequently as some of the other people in the campaign campaign did, it was again incumbent upon us, if we believed in him, to make sure that our sphere of influence got an opportunity to see that commercial. So Sherry Sinclair, you actually said that he didn't put any commercials up. So I'll take that. I'll own that, because you sit here with me every Wednesday, and I didn't check you to make sure you saw his commercials. I made some assumption that you saw it. So I have to take some ownership that I didn't do the very thing that I'm suggesting that we all need to do, that we need to make sure. You know, that, I mean, there is no excuse that you sit next to me every Wednesday. You and I talk frequently during the week, that I didn't say to you, hey, do you know Jim Johnson? But he spent an hour here on the show. And you guys can share this show with your sphere of influence, so that all of those people know who Jim Johnson is. It doesn't cost anything. Right? That's the power that we have. And I'll tell you, can you imagine, and that's what I put on my post, can you imagine if this groundswell of people who said they wanted something different came out and said, you know what, we're prepared if we don't get a sit down and we don't get to negotiate in a manner in which we believe it's fair to us and our community, we're prepared to go and write Jim Johnson in. Their biggest fears could be realized, much like when they cast aside the Bernie Sanders voters. And look what happened. So you guys have the leverage. He laid the table. He set it for you. You just have to do something. You now have to be involved, and you have to do something. But now, I want to move on to something a little more scandalous, if you don't mind. I don't know if you guys saw the Tap Into article, but there was a Tap Into article that was written that kind of laid out the campaign for governor, and it seems as though the mayor's camp, Mayor Ras Baraka's camp, and some of the early supporters of Phil Murphy, namely Mayor James and Councilwoman Gail Chaneyfield Jenkins and Calvin West and some other folks, are being maligned by some people as being non-effective and a non-factor in Phil Murphy's primary victory. Now, there are a couple things. And then, because I want to address all of this. And then, I thought I addressed it in a thread, and then somebody said, well, Eric, you need to understand that Mitty Baraka is the guru of politics in Newark. So I'm going to, as my friend who's not here with me today, Kevin Jenkins says, I'm going to try to unpack a little bit of that for you guys. Right? So firstly, let us remember that Mayor Baraka was with Fulop. He wasn't with Murphy. He was with Fulop. And if Mitty Baraka was the guru, and if Ras Baraka was all powerful, they should have been able to convince Fulop to press forward, guaranteeing him a victory. But it's apparent that Steve Fulop, based on having conversations with Murphy, felt that even having the dynamic duo in his corner, that he wasn't going to be successful. So, I think that the fact that his first choice candidate dropped out of the race kind of spoke volumes for a number of things, notwithstanding the fact that he may not have had the level of confidence, right? And it is my further understanding that the guru, the dynamic duo, weren't notified of Steve Fulop dropping out of the race until the day it happened. So this whole notion of value that they project out wasn't valued by the guy in Jersey City enough to call him and say, hey, listen, the guy who I think is so brilliant and smart and capable, let me talk to you and get your insight about what it is that I'm going to do. He made a decision and he just did it. And again, my understanding is that the dynamic duo, ass in the wind with no candidate, went crawling to Phil Murphy. Let's have the real conversation. So by the time they had gotten to Phil Murphy, I want you to understand this, Phil Murphy had already consolidated the power structure in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey. And before he did that, he already had former Mayor James, Councilwoman Cheneyfield, and Calvin West in his corner. So this notion that the dynamic duo played some major role in what was inevitable is absolutely absurd. And I would dare anybody to call me and challenge me. And for the person who put up on a thread that I was insulting him by saying he should raise his standards since he was calling Midi Baraka the guru of politics in Newark, and he said it was insulting, I said to him, it was insulting that you would even, knowing me, knowing what I know about politics, that you would even come to me and mention him as some sort of a guru. So that is exactly what happened. But then Midi Baraka went further in this in his tirade in Tap Into Newark, and he posted a quote, and the quote says, "The mayor is the king of the city. So says Amiri Midi Baraka Jr., the brother of Ras Baraka. Murphy walked into the South Ward with us right before the election, and this time our operation was fully prepared. We did our regular drill." So the first thing that I would like to ask the chief of staff is what exactly is the regular drill? See, I mean, are you admitting to the intimidation that I always talk about? Are you admitting to the threat of loss of jobs if folks don't support? Is that the drill that you're talking about? Let's have the discussion about the drill. Because I was intrigued when I thought for a moment that the chief of staff was ready to admit all, that he was ready to tell all about the drill that occurs, their regular drill that occurs, that I'm assuming is signed off by the king of Newark. Guys, I want you to understand this, right? I sit and watch the threads and the posts that you guys put up about Donald Trump and your feelings about Donald Trump and Donald Trump's Trumpisms and his tearing down the pillars of democracy and him wanting some sort of a monarchy. In your own backyard, these guys are blatantly having that exact same conversation. And you have folks who come on threads as apologists for them having these same conversations that Donald Trump had. And I don't understand how one side of your brain can be critical of Donald Trump and the other side of your brain can be accepting of this nonsense in your own backyard. I need somebody to explain that to me, because I really, really don't understand it. But there is a there are a couple things that, and I'm gonna post this in my thread. But Mayor James was asked to weigh in on Midi Baraka's claim. And he said it's irresponsible and disingenuous and a brazen act of egotism to say that one individual was responsible for what happened on Election Day, James said. If Midi is going to say that they were the kingmakers, then he reiterates what I said. Then Fulop would have been standing on the stage giving a victory speech on Tuesday. Says James, who cut a Murphy endorsement video, right? And this video got close to 20,000 views. He said play no small part in the victory him being able to get the word out and attaching his name and his image and Councilwoman Cheneyfield's image to Phil Murphy played no small role. He goes further to say the Bible teaches us that the weakest word in the dictionary is I, and the strongest, most powerful word is we. He said he challenges Mitty to suggest that the clergy, the union leaders, spending their monies, Newark sororities, and independent citizens, including himself and Gail Cheneyfield. The multitude of people who were on social media encouraging and pushing Murphy, the hundreds of people who Mitty had no contact with prior to Election Day. And in fact, remember, this is the same dude who showed up at the Priory when Murphy had his event and tried to intimidate folks and took car keys from city employees who dared to want to support Murphy. This is the same guy who's discrediting any of what those people did and heaping 100% of the success of Phil Murphy on the shoulders of him and his king brother. Well, Mitty, I want to say to you, dude, I think that you're probably the only one that has crowned your brother king. And I think that it was a foolish thing to do. But I think that it was, in your mind, a genuine sentiment, right? It was something genuine, something that you really feel. So it wasn't so what I do appreciate is that probably for one of the first times in this 3 years of his administration, you've been forthright and open about how you feel about things. And so your feelings about him being the king of Newark and that all of the other people being servants at best, right? But in your opinion, none of them served. None of them were of any value. Again, speaks volumes. And so when you guys look at what's going on, the culture that exists in City Hall, when you listen to all of the people who talk about being under thumb of a tyrannical rule down at 920 Broad Street, well, it's no longer Eric who's saying that. It's Mitty Baraka who's now telling you that, who's saying that his brother is the king, and they run a drill. They run a drill to get people to do what they want them to do. And I would challenge you guys to question not just Mitty, not just Raz, but question all of those who support them. Tell me what that drill is. Ask them, what do you think about the fact that his brother referred to him as king? Are you subservient to Raz? Ask his supporters that. Ask those who work down at City Hall that question. Are they peasants that bow to the king? Ask them. And see, it's not a trivial thing, guys. Because, sometimes things that are said like that, they're things that have been harbored, things that have been festering, things that have been stirring up. And then he had an opportunity, just like Bill Maher, right? Remember Bill Maher came out and used the N-word, right? That thing was bubbling up inside of Bill Maher. He wanted to say it and was looking for the opportunity, and the reason to say it. And then he said it. And I think that's exactly what Mitty did. He wanted to say it. We heard rumors, and I heard factually in my own ears during the campaign where he talked about this city being theirs, that it was their time, that it was Raz's time to ascend. These were words. But when it's dangerous, when those words get turned into actions, and then people are at the brunt of whatever the outcome of those actions are. And we saw a little bit of it during the campaign. I'm talking about the 2013-14 campaign. And then we saw an inkling of it when Fulop was still in the race. An inkling of it. We saw them getting ready to rear their drill, right, of intimidation, right? Taking cars, threatening jobs, showing up at events, taking down names and license plate numbers. We saw that. And I guess that's what happens when somebody is trying to protect a kingdom. I want you guys to pay attention to what's going on. We got 2 elections, guys. I think we got to learn to multitask in our community now. We've got the primary, and now we see what's happening, and we understand what's happening. And if you don't understand, I'll explain it to you. What is happening in this general election, rather, right now, is there is a jockeying for power, or perceived power, because they know, and by they I mean the administration in Newark, they know that once you get beyond November, now you've shortened the time frame to run for mayor, right? Because you get beyond November, now you got December, so you're into the holiday season. You got January, you're into the New Year's. Then you got February, right? March, April, May. So during those 4 months, you're trying to give out Valentine's Day cards and flowers, and you're trying to get prepared for your Mother's Day giveaway. And I guess he'll do some sort of a turkey drive on Christmas and on Thanksgiving. So those are the things that they'll queue up to do. But what he needs to be able to show is strength. And when you look at the last 2 school board elections, don't you understand the current makeup of this chessboard? When you look at the 2 school board elections, the mayor didn't fare too well. His candidates didn't fare too well at all. And so now you look and you roll around and say his candidate dropped out of the governor's race, so he had to come and crawl over to another candidate and pick that candidate up. But by the time he picked that candidate up, that candidate had already had momentum, had already started sealing deals that Raz couldn't take credit for. So the only thing that he was the mayor of the city of Newark, who could be posted up on a stage for photo ops. The real work, I believe, like I said, was done beforehand. But giving this perception that it was the work, it was the drill, it was the army, it was the team, it was the infrastructure, it was all of these things that led to this, is what he needs to do to develop momentum to carry him through next year. So, to the guy who said that he's a guru, I'm sure you're sitting there wearing down your number 2 pencil with the information that I'm providing for you. But he should already know some of this stuff. It is up to you guys. Much like Jim said, now he wasn't talking about the Newark election, he was talking about the statewide election. That you guys need to be able to look and say, what do I want for the state for the next 4 years? What do I want? Not what am I not happy with, but what is it that I want? And then once you understand what it is that you want, this idea of being proactive, and then organizing and mobilizing, and then grabbing a candidate and then moving that candidate through that system that you set up, not that you waited for somebody else to set up, is what's going to bring you victory. Not doing that is going to lead to just more disappointment, I'm sorry to say. Somebody says that did he answer the lieutenant governor? Sorry, I walked away. Did he answer the lieutenant governor? Carlos, to answer your question about Jim Johnson, this is what I would say to you guys in the thread. And I'm looking at, from Dave, who said, he would help out, and some of the other people who said that they, are waiting and, will look to be a part of this thing. I'm going to ask you the question again: why wait? Not just wait. So if you're in any of the other towns or counties within New Jersey, why wait for the governor's race, or why wait for the county executive race? All of this stuff is up, all of it. And I'm telling you, man. And we want to break. I said to him, my biggest fear, man, is that that you create, that you started something and folks don't know what to do with it. Folks don't know the next step to take. You know, and not just, again, not just in terms of the governor's race or the county executive race, but the council races in your communities, the municipal, the mayor's race in your community, the assembly, freeholder races that are coming up in November. All of them that you have to begin to organize. So that's my little take on Ras Baraka and Midi Baraka and that. I'm furious about it. You know, and you know, my hope is this. So this is what I hope. If Ras and Midi, if you guys want to do something, the thing that you can do now that Phil Murphy is the presumptive winner, right? Because it's a blue state, so the thought is that he's going to win. The thing that you can do now is start to identify like real issues and get real answers, right? So real issues impacting our community and get real answers with real timelines so that you can come back to us and say, hey, this is what I negotiated for you guys. That's one of the things that you can do. That would be really helpful if we can do that. Real issues with real answers that have timelines. That would be something that would be helpful. Now, the other thing that I want to ask, and I'm going to give the call number, 973-457-8000. This was a question that I posed on Facebook, and my friend and sister from another mother, Sheila, I think she thought she was correcting my grammar, but I knew what I was saying. We continue to talk about the need for a black agenda. And even until yesterday, I was arguing that, you know, the Black Issues Convention continues to talk, you know, for the last 40 years about a black agenda. And so, but I asked the question, I says, does the continued call for a single black agenda suggest that there's monolithism in the black community? In other words, are we monolithic? Do we all think the same thing? What about the black person who lives in Short Hills versus the black person who lives in Miller Terrell versus the black person who lives in Westfield, or the black person who lives in Ivy Hill, or the black person who lives in Society Hill? Maybe there needs to be within there a special consideration to any social justice issues that subgroup might be experiencing, which might be preventing them from being able to achieve. That was a mouthful, but do you understand what I'm saying? So if you have middle class folks, they have different issues than working poor black folk, and we need to address both issues, but maybe not primarily as black folk, but as middle class and as working poor. And now once you start to address the issues, you have an agenda for working poor. Now within that working poor category, you see that you have black folks who have been disenfranchised by policies and systems and other illegal things, right? Or you know, maybe not illegal, but unjust, certainly. And then you look to fix or correct those things. But to simply say that we need to gather in a room and look at all black people the same and that we need to come up with a black plan, I think is nonsensical. That's what I concluded after yesterday. I think it's absolutely nonsensical. Because I'm going to tell you, I can sit and understand the problems of a working poor person or a poor person, right? I could listen to the problems of an unemployed person, but I'm not unemployed. So I'm looking for a better opportunity, right? I have an opportunity. I'm looking for a better opportunity. That person's looking for an opportunity. That person may be looking for a minimum wage job. I can't get a minimum wage job. So I'm looking for something higher. So when I'm talking to this person about what it is they're aspiring toward, which is a minimum wage job that's just going to get them to this next little step, and I'm saying, well, I'm 5,000 steps beyond that. I understand you need to get to that step, but I need somebody to come and listen to my issues, because where I am, I need to get to that step over there. I need to get to step 5,622. You're trying to get to step 2. There's a difference. So this black agenda, I don't think can be formulated to cover getting that person to step 2 and getting me to step 562. But I think that the hustle by black leadership has been that all they have to do is tell you that they're going to be working on a black agenda, and that you fall into it and you believe that that is so. If you believe, and I would love a call in, because that's my thought, and that's my thought based on having posted that yesterday and then thinking about it overnight, and then coming in here and saying, well, this is what it is that I think. If you believe something different, I welcome it. But I did see a thread where somebody said, well, unless a politician has a black agenda, I'm not going to support him. That was from my younger brother from another mother. And I thought about his post, and I said, well, why are you waiting? Which is another post that I put up, which talked about, again, holding the community responsible for being more proactive. And I asked him, I said, why are you waiting for a politician to come to you with a black agenda? Why would you be waiting for that? And so here was the question that I asked. I said, should the black agenda originate from politicians or from the community or from both? Again, should the black agenda, 973-457-8000, should the black agenda originate from politicians or from the black community or from both? Should there be a collaborative between a politician and the community to come up with, I don't want to even call it the black agenda anymore. I want to call it proposed policies for black folk who are in a particular socio-economic class that can help them elevate themselves in that class and then out of that class to another class. Should it be a collaborative between the two? And now, for those of you who say yes, there should be a collaborative, because there were some people who said that, the question that I have for you is, well, then on what basis did you elect the politician? On what basis did you elect the politician? So if the things that I'm talking about don't exist, if that politician didn't come forward with something that was a proposed policy that could address the issues of a particular class, and more specifically African Americans that fell within that class, then on what basis did you support that politician? Hello, caller.
Hey, what's up, Eric? Darren Martin here, brother. How you doing today?
Darren Martin, man. How are you?
Hey, man, I ain't got no
Hey, listen, Darren, are you staying hydrated?
I'm going to be out there in a little while, so I'm drinking some water now.
let me before, and then, part of that was a joke, but let me say, real quick before you make your statement or ask your question, for any of you guys who have family members or friends who are senior citizens in particular, please call and check on them. Make sure their air conditioners are working. It's supposed to be almost 94 degrees today. That's dangerous, right?
Yeah,
so you want to call and you want to check in on them. And you want to make sure that their air conditioners work. You want to make sure that their apartments are ventilated, and you want to make sure that they have water. So please make sure you do that. All right, brother. What's going on?
Absolutely. Good point, Eric. And I'll tell them to make sure they bring the pets in. Don't leave the pets outside.
Oh, yes, please. No, you're right. Bring the pets in the house. Please don't leave them outside. And make sure, if you do have them outside, that you have them in a shaded area, and make sure that the water bowl is filled.
Bingo. You want it, brother. You want it.
There we go.
So, whatever we're going to call it, I don't know, Black Agenda, whatever name we wind up coming up with, a couple things. One, I think it has to come from the community. I think it has to be community-based, grassroots. Reason being, politicians will be politicians, meaning they get clouded by a whole bunch of stuff. and get a lot of people in their ears. So I don't really believe that their agenda is our agenda, so to speak. The second portion of what I want to say is we got to meet people where they're at, and that's why I thought your point was so good, so eloquent just now, that this person may be looking for a, like I got a call last night, somebody looking for a low-income apartment. And I'm going to try to help the person out and put them in the right direction, etc. But it may be somebody looking for a higher income apartment. We got to meet people where they are, and then do some measurable goal setting with them. Because some people, if you don't give them a framework or a template to go by, they'll stay where they are, and that's why I think it happens to a lot of our people, because they don't see their way out of the gutter or the hole that they're in, or they think it's a comfortability factor for them. They just want to stay there. They think that's the way it should be. So we got to meet people where they are.
So do you believe, Darren, because I had this in-depth conversation last night about this, man, until wee hours in the morning, where I was saying there is no white agenda, there's no Jewish agenda, there's some Jews who developed an agenda for themselves, right? And they benefited, but you see some poor Jews. So all Jews are not benefiting from that agenda, right? A white agenda. There's no white agenda. There's some white folk who got together and they developed an agenda that was specific toward them becoming, them enriching themselves. But all tides, the tides didn't lift all boats, because you have some white folks who are living in double wides, right? You got some white folks who are homeless. You got some white folks who are in shelters. So all white folks didn't benefit from this, from an agenda. I think that you have groups of people who want to move out of one socioeconomic class into another, and they get together and then they begin to organize and mobilize, put politicians in positions who are going to set policies that are favorable to what their particular agenda is.
Right. I totally agree with you. But I think that one of our problems as a people, we've been shopped around and hoodwinked and bamboozled for so long that I don't know if many of our people even know how to sit down and even discuss an agenda or something that works for us as a people. I just think we've been, oh my gosh.
But I'm asking you that. So, but the question I'm asking is this, right? So if you got a person who's a middle class person, and they're sitting and talking about an agenda, are they really discussing an agenda? I mean, are they really working on an agenda with somebody who is working poor, or are these middle class black folk working on an agenda to increase their status?
Oh, great question, Eric. I will venture out to believe that middle class people are talking to people that's in their same class. Right. Low income people are talking to people that's in their same class, and not working on anything for anybody else. You have a select few that may want to do it, but I'm sure it's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm trying to get to, man. I'm trying to get folks to understand. I don't think that rising tides lift all boats.
I like that.
I don't. And so organize and mobilize around folks who, this is what I say, and I may be wrong. I saw a bunch of frown or angry faces coming across my Facebook page, so somebody doesn't agree with me. But I think that the reason we're stuck, Darren, is because we're not monolithic, and so you have this array of people. This is what I challenge folks to do. Get 20 people in a room. Give everybody a legal pad and tell them to write just one issue that we should tackle.
Wow.
And watch, you'll get 20 different responses. And now it'll take you decades to get those 20 people to agree on which one should be first. Because each one will talk about the thing that is an immediate impact on their lives to be the first thing. And so now, if you have all folks who are from the middle class, then yes, they'll have some commonality, right? There'll be some overlay where they say, okay, we can find these things affect all of us, so let's work on that. But I think that there's such a disparity when you're talking about somebody who lives in Fairfield, Connecticut, and somebody who lives in Millertorrell, to try to get them to sit down to come up with the one single thing that should be the first thing tackled when looking to develop a black agenda.
You want to hear something funny, Eric? And you didn't even notice before you said what you said. About I guess 7-8 months ago in Jersey City, about 40 churches are involved with an organization called Jersey City Together. And they decided to ask all of their members, they did like a listening tour, and they asked all of their members in all of those churches to give them 3 quality life issues that they personally believe needed to be worked on in the Jersey City community. The top 3 was crime, the property taxes, and jobs. I will tell you that although people put that on their papers, it's still now down to like 1 out of the 3 that they picked, which is really amazing. Like this person, although they put jobs and this and that, crime was their main issue, or property taxes, since they're doing revaluation in Jersey City, was this issue for this person, etc. So that's why it's interesting what you just said. That's a great point, putting some people in the room and doing that.
So here's a comment, my brother. He says, black people are the only group in the country who have been tricked into not wanting a collective and unified agenda. That's not, I disagree with that.
No, that's not true.
I disagree with that. I disagree. I'm telling you, I think the biggest myth is to believe that all white people are unified. They're not.
Not a chance.
They're not. Like, we believe that all white people are unified, and then also when we say Jews, right, we think that all Jewish people are unified. That all Jews are together and all white people are together and black people just don't have it together. No, there's some white people who don't have it together. And there's some white people who are working hard to make sure that those other white people never get it together.
You better believe it.
You understand me? So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm telling you, man, I stayed up to the wee hours of the morning and said, we got to get that piece right before we start talking about a black agenda. We got to get that piece right to really understand the dynamics of this thing, because there's this belief that we can get all black folk under one big tent and we can have a kumbaya moment and we can walk out unified. And I think the fact that folks are working toward that end is why we'll never ever get anywhere, because it is an unrealistic goal, because it's never happened with any other group of people.
No. I totally agree with you there. Totally agree.
All right, my brother. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate you calling in. I know that from time to time you and I are not on the same side. But I do think that we are. I think that even though there are times where you may support one candidate or I another, or we may have some differing opinions about some things, I think that the thing that has brought us together over time is that both of us are concerned about the community, and so we may have different routes to trying to get there, but I think that we both have a mutual respect for one another, and knowing that we're trying to get there. So I appreciate you.
On the money, brother. I definitely co-sign that comment, brother. I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too, man. Be good.
All right, God bless you.
So, I mean, that's a conversation. It's a conversation, and Chuck, I understand. Hey, man, I see what you write. And so for you guys who are listening who can't read what he wrote, here's the second comment. He says, every group in this country has an agenda. You can't be serious. White agenda, Latino agenda, gay agenda, blacks are the only group that gets vilified for wanting to have an agenda. I think that you have a gay agenda. I agree with that. I think that there's a gay agenda. And I think that you have I think that there is, and I think that the gay agenda was really around, civil rights, right? So civil rights is the agenda for gays. a big part of it. Civil rights. So civil rights for African Americans, white folks fighting for civil rights as well. They have civil rights and their rights get violated. And so constitutionally, I think that there's an agenda that all folks have to be treated fairly and equally and all of that other kind of stuff. The agenda that I am referring to, and that I think that we all refer to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this agenda that will dramatically change the social conditioning or social conditions and the social economic status of the entire black community. And I'm saying to you, that has not happened with any group of people. None. Not one. There's some basic things that, you know, that you're able to get done. So you say, you know, it is illegal to discriminate. So it's illegal to discriminate based on these things. And so within these groups, everybody gets the benefit from that new law, right? So it's illegal to discriminate based on race, religion, sexual preference, whatever the different things are. So everybody gets the benefit from that new law that says you can't discriminate. I'm saying that an agenda, as I understand it, that people are craving for, is something that you know won't and can't happen as it's being presented, or it doesn't make any sense to me anymore. And so I think that folks should continue to organize and mobilize around their individual interests, and then find folks who share a common interest. And I think that when you do that, then you can move to make progress for your group. Hello, this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM.
Good morning, Eric. This is Farrakhan. How you doing today?
Hey, brother Farrakhan, man. What's the black agenda, man?
I don't know what the black agenda is per se, but I would have to argue with you that we do need one. We need a specific agenda.
Who's the we? Who's the we?
We as black people in America, possibly black people in the world. We're the only people in this country, at least, that I can say, where there was legislation, law, against how we should live. Okay, that was not the case for the Indians. They were mistreated, okay, but they were not legislated to have something done to them. We have been legislated to have something done against us, so we need to have something done for us, specific from everybody else. And if we do not receive that, then there is an agenda against us. Those legislations against us were to protect certain other members of society, right? Caucasian and white.
So we're talking about the 40 acres and a mule.
No, not just the 40 acres and a mule. We're talking just in general, Jim Crow, right? Every Jim Crow law was designed to protect white people and to hold back, pigeonhole, or harm black people.
Got it.
Right? So with that being understood, there has to be specific legislation for us, something that we've never gotten. So I hear, you know, you got Pop talking about reparations. You got all different people saying all different types of things. I don't know the one solution. I believe that it's because it was such a broad treatment of us as a people, then you're going to have some broad solutions.
Okay, so you're essentially saying that the agenda should be it should be an ask of reparations or something of that nature that makes amends for
a demand of it.
A demand. Okay. No. Okay. A demand
of those things.
Got you. I'm not going to argue that point. So a demand. So your thought is that the black agenda should be should encompass a demand of something that begins to make black folks whole, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have to have that. And we don't. And we keep just saying, let's be part of society. Why do black people, just perfect example, why do we pay taxes in this country considering the mistreatment that we have gotten from our government. Why have we not been given a forbearance or some kind of deferment of, listen, for the next 50 years, black folks need to get to a certain level. So they shouldn't pay income tax, or there may be property tax or something, so that their wealth can grow. Instead, we are just out saying, okay, we won't do you bad anymore, but we're not going to do you better. So you just got to ride with everybody else. That's just not how it should go. We need a black agenda. We need black politicians, or even white politicians, whatever, to say there has to be some set-asides for this group that has been set aside already previous. Until we get that, man, we'll be having this conversation in 50 years. Your daughters will be on the radio talking about this. My daughter will be talking about this. That's an absolute. If we do not do something specific for the improvement of life and for black society in the United States of America, and that goes throughout the world. Because the treatment was throughout the world, right? Every country, Europe, every country in Europe, every part of the EU benefited from the destruction of black society from Africa, right? Every country, I don't care if it's France, England, Germany, the Dutch countries, whatever ones those are, Spain, all of them. They all benefited from that slave trade and the mistreatment and the abuse of the continent of Africa and its indigenous people. Henceforth, something has to be done basically on a worldwide scale, or you're going to be having this conversation forever. No way around it.
All right, man. I appreciate your call.
Take care. Talk to you later.
Peace. So, we should get something. I don't know. Do I agree that there was mistreatment? Absolutely. Do I believe that there should be reparations? I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna hold that one until maybe I'll pick that one. You know what, guys? I'm gonna pick that one up on Thursday. And I'm gonna pick it up on Thursday because I have brother Ian Burroughs in on Thursday. So Ian Burroughs and I are going to have a discussion, and I'm sure he'll appreciate this one, a discussion on reparations. And I'll promote the show so that folks can call in. Because I just think that, you know what I see? It's almost like I see a whole bunch of black folks lining up somewhere, some town hall, and the government just reaching in its pocket and throwing money out, and folks just grabbing money. I'm not gonna co-sign or condone that. I think that I can't condone that. But I'll further discuss it on Thursday. But black agenda or no black agenda? What should it look like? Who should be a part of it? Folks say it should come from the community. Once again, what community? Now, you don't have a monolithic community. So when you say it comes from the community, well, what community? Who's a part of that community? Middle class community, poor community, the affluent black community, because there is one. Is P. Diddy sitting down with, dude from on the corner of Chancellor Avenue, or Main Street in East Orange? He going over to 4th Ave, talk to those black folks about, black agenda. I'm not sure how that works out, right? But when we say the community, I gotta try to understand that. But anyway, it's something to be talked about. And then what I'll say to you again is this: for all of those of you who believe that there needs to be a black agenda, and you have elected officials who are running that you go and you support, if they have not brought something for some sort of a proposal of some kind, at least I could say that Farrakhan, when he called, he said, hey, taxes, what about deferring taxes? We give tax abatements to buildings and things like that, right? We could 30 years no taxes for black folks. At least Farrakhan had a plan. I haven't heard any of our politicians have one. Anyway, listen, I hope you guys enjoyed Jim Johnson on the show. And tune in tomorrow. I'll be joined by former board chairman Rashan Hassan. And then hopefully maybe we'll get Kevin Jenkins on to talk about this education symposium that he was speaking at. But for now, this is Eric, and I'm out.
May I be the first to say
Blast Radio
has been
94.3. Ready. Dance hall.
Soca. Hip hop and R&B. African. Disco. Oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3.